We're live. We're a few seconds early. Had an alarm go off. Make sure I don't have any more. Well, greet everybody. I expect this will be a smaller crowd, as it should be. Got Lars, Mrs. One-Eyed Cat, and the One-Eyed Cat calling. Big Mike, Unfinished Project, Junkyard D, Big Bad Jones, Peckerwood Customs from Upside Down Land. Cool. Dakota. Well, howdy. Captain do. So I've had a few people ask me over the years about doing something on firearm training at some time. So that's just what this is. It's about training. It's not about what all guns you have, and it's not a debate on the Second Amendment or gun control or any of that stuff. It's just it's an interesting topic. And I've traveled the country to train. You got all kinds of good stuff from all kinds of good places, and this is the place to ask those questions about operating your stuff, carrying your stuff, actually using your stuff. I've had training in force on force, in the shoot house, live fire, ammunition, training on the legal side of it, Masayub, Andrew Branca, all that stuff. And so this is just a good place for these kind of questions. Having it, using it effectively, operating your stuff, how to attempt to not get shot, because that's more important than shooting, etc., etc. Captain Do, that's what this is about. If you saw the thumbnail for the live stream, that's why it's on a Thursday night. Wanted to do something a little bit different. I'll greet the other folks who've slid in here, like Pure Pontiac Garage and Smoke Wrench Sean and B&R and Bad Tree Blake and JB, and my Aunt Nancy's here, and Old McDonald. He has a bullseye in the middle of his TV screen and the trigger is ready. Well, that's on you. Graham Pito Vic is here. Howdy, all of y'all. So I don't know how this will go. I have no idea. In all the years, I've never done it, but I thought it would be interesting. I can tell you, I've taught for, this is my 15th year teaching. And even though COVID slowed me down and I didn't teach but maybe a class a year during COVID. Yeah, my Aunt Nancy's she actually took one of my classes that was during COVID, but it was a class for the family. But I've taught for all these years. And every time at lunch, when I have lunch with the class, it's just a round table of questions. The thing is the class would always ask questions about the stuff that they had in the first part of the class, which was from 8 a.m. to noon, which was all kinds of stuff about carry, about travel, mindset, tactics, skill, and gear, all of that good stuff, right? How to fly with a gun on a commercial plane, what to do in a traffic stop, use of force, all that stuff's in the morning. And so that was the questions they would have, and it was just a really interesting thing. If I thought that they would be used to the camera, it would have been interesting over the years to set up a camera and actually film that. That would have been a whole interesting series of videos. But got to remember, that's since 2009, and people just weren't doing much of that kind of thing like they do now. What will be really interesting is, and a few times I've had dinner with the class after the range portion is over, and then they're asking questions about all kinds of stuff, about how to shoot better, grips, sights, how to reload, malfunction clearances, working under stress, the balance of speed and accuracy. All of those questions come up from the second half. But generally speaking, once they get done with that, we let them rest, recharge their magazines, make sure to have their guns loaded before they leave, which to me is one of the marks of a good class versus a stupid class. If you take a training class that says, make sure to have your gun unloaded before you leave, that's a bad class. You shouldn't have taken it. But I make sure students, get their guns all, mags recharged, guns loaded, and everything before they leave. And then we police all the brass on the range. And generally speaking, they get their certificates and they are beat. It's time to go home. But if we could have had a whole nother question and answer thing after that, that would have been good stuff too. And for whatever it's worth, I had talked with Colleen about her hosting a class in South Carolina earlier this year. I'm also talking with Lars. I may do a class in Middle Tennessee here in the spring. And just because we can, what I'd like to do is make it a no-name nationals benefit class. And while anybody will be welcome to take it, what I'd like to do is use the tuition in gross. I'll cover the expenses of the class out of pocket, but let the tuition in gross go toward the no-name nationals general fund. I mean, some people have bake sales for fundraisers, and some people, like Girl Scouts selling Thin Mints and whatever. People have fundraisers in different ways. Churches selling cookbooks, whatever. We can do one this way, right? So just a thought. But anyway, yeah, there's no real agenda tonight. I will share proactively. If people don't have questions, I'll just share stuff from all kinds of training classes, because it is really interesting. It is a whole different world than, say, going to the gun store. Old McDonald says, I wish we had a rifle range where I am. Everyone says they shoot at the local gravel pit, but I'm not sure how safe that would be. The gravel pit itself is fine. It's the other people there that generally make it unsafe. I rarely ever see an unsafe range. I very often see unsafe people who hang out and shoot there. And I don't mind naming names. The Potts Mountain Range over here near where I am, I don't know how people don't get killed there. That place is so ridiculously unsafe and stupid. I've had muzzles pointed right in my face. I don't know how many times by stupid people doing stupid things with guns there. And the range is an extremely dangerous place because of that. I feel far safer in a class where there's a 360-degree firing line. There is no firing. In advanced classes, there's no firing line at all, right? Like, it's hot in all directions all the time. I feel far safer in those classes than I do one of these managed ranges that's just a line of untrained people. It's no question. Grandma Vic says, how do I go about getting a firearm legal? Well, I think North Carolina has the purchase permit thing. I'm not really sure. The best place to ask, though, is not asking your cop buddy, and it's not asking all that. Send out a message to Grassroots North Carolina. That is North Carolina's gun rights group. They will know. I believe Paul Vallone is still president. That's the place to ask. And as far as training goes, I can make a great recommendation for training down there. Of course, you're always welcome to come and train with me if we have a class up here. I don't care where you get training. I have no jealousy at all. You train anywhere and everywhere. Train lots of places. But in North Carolina, go to my friend Keith Harper's place, A Triggered Response. He's in Hickory, and it is worth your drive. And yes, I know you're in the Fayetteville area. There's lots of guys who were squared away in the military, but if that's their resume, hey, I was in the military, no more questions needed, that's not the place to go. Or if NRA certified instructor is the resume, that's not the place to go. It can be on the resume, certainly, but that should not constitute their entire resume. If they don't want to post a training resume, that's not the place to go. If you're morbidly curious, my training resume is in the description of this video. Grand Pito Vic 1-2 12 gauges in the gun pool at work. Cool. Semi-auto in the pump. Yeah. Well, bullets ricochet off a stone. What do you think dirt is made out of? It's made out of stone. It's just really small. I will say that you get ricochets just off the bank where people shoot enough where you get erosion because the dirt wears away and the bigger stuff is behind it. But also you should have a pretty good shear factor. So should be okay. If you are really worried about ricochets, use frangible. Shoot frangible. I'm not sure about that. Like I said, we're not necessarily talking about laws or policies or anything. Captain Deuce says state of Alabama is talking about something with permit carry. I'm not sure. I will say that if you want to know the best place for gun law information in general for all 50 states, go to handgunlaw.us. A guy named Gary Slider maintains that site. He does a wonderful job. He can tell you the specifics of the permit process and everything. Great site. If you have Virginia questions, ask me. Graham Pito Vic says, I always have a 12 gauge, a 308, and a 9mm. 3 great calibers. That is those are 3 of my go-tos. Grandma Vic says, I know how to shoot, been shooting the shooting range with hubby a lot. Well, that's a cool bonding exercise. But if you two were to take a class from me, the first thing I do is put you on opposite ends of the line. Then you can debrief it together after class. Big Bad Jones asks, what's my thought on carrying a revolver versus semi-auto pistols? I like double-action revolvers. Feel like they're simpler for beginners. Why? A Glock is just a magazine-fed revolver. That's all it is. A Glock is super simple. That's like saying a manual transmission is simpler than an automatic for a beginner driver. It's not. What I would say is that I would start people on, in general. Now, for youth, it's a different story. With youth, I'd recommend something like a 10-22, Ruger 22 rifle. But for adults, I'd start them on a 9mm Glock. And then we, of course, work with them on grip and trigger press and all of that, and how to run the slide and all that stuff. We just work through all of that. I think that the semi-auto is the way to go for the beginner. It's just fine. But as far as a revolver goes, revolvers are okay. But here's the thing. Revolvers are kind of like... everybody has fond memories, of their first car, but that's because they remember more of the good stuff and less of the bad. And with revolvers, we always want to remember how cool they look and the finish and all that, and how it looks like something Dirty Harry carries, which is all true. But, they start getting problems. The least little bit of grit will stop up a revolver. There are just things with revolvers that are not as good. And I know Jerry Mitchell can reload one lightning fast, but the reality is that the rest of us cannot. Semi-auto just wins in just about every way. And also, too, when people were saying revolvers are more reliable, they were saying this 50 years ago when semi-automatics, the only semi-automatics you had out there were like a Browning High Power in 1911, two Jam Master Specials. Today, with the Glock, that's not true. You can put a Glock in a mud puddle, pick it up, and still fire a full mag. I could make a case a Glock is possibly more reliable, even in those conditions, than most revolvers. And it's a possibility, Dizzy. We'll see. I want to host a Middle Tennessee class sometime this year. I think it would be a good thing. I've done classes for an awful lot of groups, and I'm glad to do one for this group. Thumper grew up with guns, shot expert in Air Force, concealed carry. Cool. Yeah, I've shot one qualifier for IDPA ever. I was never an IDPA member. I would shoot matches, and I've shot one ever, and I shoot it with my everyday carry gun that I'm carrying right now. Gun belt, T-shirt, concealment, the whole thing, right? I just look like a dude who showed up hanging out to watch. Like, I don't have the starched vest or any of that, the race guns, none of that stuff. So I go out there and shoot with my EDC everything, and I shot sharpshooter. And like everybody, I'm like, oh, man, if I'd have done these couple things better, I'd have shot expert. But it's the only qualifier I've ever shot. So maybe in another 20 years, I'll shoot another. Yeah, here's a link for a triggered response, ATR.training. Yeah, that's my friend Keith Harper. He's a good dude. And what you'll find with trainers, you should seek out good training with a lot of different people who have good resumes and actually post them, who've been a lot of places to train. I've seen people who, and Keith is not one of those. Keith is trained everywhere. I've run into him, with Mass IU, Thunder Ranch, everywhere. He's a good operator. But the thing is, some of these places, you can tell they've never trained a variety of places because they'll have some crazy doctrine in mind. And if you think automotive YouTube bickering in the comments is bad, you haven't seen anything till you've looked at the firearm side of YouTube. The firearm training side of YouTube, it's almost as bad as Democrat versus Republican. Almost. The only good firearms art instructor I would trust is Sergeant York, according to Old MacDonald. Well, okay. Captain Dew's talking about permits. I'll tell you, you don't want to have a permit, don't have a permit. If you travel is a big reason to have a permit because it needs to be recognized in other places. But that's everybody's option. I mean, I certainly don't think we should have to pay for a permit and beg for permission for a right we were born with. But that's, I have the permit. I play the game. I actually have 4 of them. And I'm thinning that down because, see, when I first got a Virginia permit, it was only recognized in 13 states. So I've got a Virginia permit, and then I needed coverage in Nevada. So I applied for a permit by mail in New Hampshire, a state where I've never been, and I got a New Hampshire permit. But the New Hampshire permit was recognized in Nevada. And I got a Pennsylvania permit because, going to Carlisle, of course, if I go see the One-Eyed Cat or the Nelsons or something, it's good to have that Pennsylvania permit, even though it's not recognized anywhere else. And Illinois. And in Illinois is not easy to get. It's expensive. It's a bunch of process. It's a pain. I had to go and take NRA basic pistol, even though I'd long had certification to teach NRA basic pistol. I had to take it as a student, and then I had to shoot a qualifier in Tennessee to get an Illinois permit when I had never been to Illinois. So none of this stuff has to make any sense, but it's just regulation nonsense for the sake of regulation nonsense. There's Lars with this handgunlaw.us. That's a wonderful site. It's got an interactive map. If you want to know where your permit is honored, how to apply, it has really good on restrictions. See, if you go looking at the forums and stuff, like, I don't know, I won't even name them, but there's a few forums out there. You can just get a fountain of misinformation. People just guessing at stuff. Gary won't do that. He'll actually cite things. Do you think it's practical to carry a black powder revolver? Do you think it's practical to drive a Model T Ford to work every day? Thumper says, I start noobs on a 10-22. That's a great place to start them because it lets them just, they can like prone out and just worry about the sights, the trigger. They don't have to worry about readjusting everything, running a bolt or any of that. So it's a good piece to start them on. I suspect that's a Jerry Mitchell look short if I had to guess. Grandma layered a tighter group with a Glock 26.40. What is that? A 40 caliber 26? That would be a Glock 27. I can show you how to fix that, Grand Pito Vic. Although I will say for years, and it wasn't so much the last, say, 5, but for about 5-6 years there, the women on average were shooting better in my classes. What's your go-to carry gun? My go-to carry gun is a Glock 17. I've carried every day for a very long time, and it's got about, I would say, 28 to 30,000 rounds through it. Most people that give you a round count like that are just purely full of crap. They just have these numbers that are just whatever. I can tell you mine, if you actually add up how many classes it's been through, both teaching and training and practice, it is around that number. Can't show it to you because YouTube gets stupid about such things. And I actually know a fellow instructor who had an instructor development workshop going, and his students had the red and black Glock sim gun, and they had, and it's not a real gun, but it's the training pistol Glock has, the cert gun, that's what they call it, cert gun, and YouTube for that. So for the classes you provide the gun, I have a fleet of loaner Glock 19s for students who need them. And a lot of students bring their own guns, and that's great, but a lot of guns go down during class, and the Glocks, of course, don't. Dizzy's favorite handgun was a Ruger 357 revolver with a 7-inch barrel. Okay. Bad Tree Blake likes the Canics. Yeah, they run. The Canics will run. Or Yannick, if you want to be all sophisticated, but we call them Canics here. They do run, and yeah, it's cheaper than a Glock. They work. They work. My friends at Tactical Response would have Canics for rental guns. So if you flew in international or from a communist state and you needed some hardware, that's what they would rent you. And man, those things have miles on them. They would run. Rob's driving street cars here. What's up? Captain Dew's talking about stuff he doesn't own. Favorite magazine-fed guns, a Beretta 92. Take one through a training class before you buy one. That's one reason I carry Glocks, is for stuff that doesn't make it through the class. We've had a lot of that. I've had 2 Kimbers literally have parts fall off in the middle of a class. They had to switch to a Glock, literally. I had a Taurus just lock up one time. The place where I used to teach for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years before COVID, I had the best gig there. It was a local gun shop, and he just gave me this area. He says, just do your thing. I had my classroom all set up. It was great. And then he was having heart problems. And it was right before COVID. And he turned in his FFL and just retired from business. And so I was collateral damage to that, but it sure wasn't for the classes. I had packed houses and people loved it. And it was great. I had a range right there, classroom right there. I come in at 7 in the morning, kick the heat up a little. It was great. It was great. But oh well. Went the way of the dinosaur. Thumper likes 45. Not only works, it fits me. 45 is a good round. Mostly old parts. Ron Ward is here. How's it going, sir? He says that his opinion won't bode well with a lot of folks, but thinks firearm safety courses should be taught in elementary schools. I agree. I would hope if they did it that they would get good instructors. Obviously, there's a certain age that needs to be, you need to leave the gun alone. NRA teaches, for the youngest people, the Eddie Eagle stuff, leave the room, tell an adult. I think that's fine for the youngest of kids, but obviously, as they get enough competence to handle a gun, of course, I would agree with that. And the great thing is, Colleen, whether or not they agree doesn't matter to me. That's why I'm doing this on a Thursday. I'm not going to go out of my way to worry about people don't like the stuff that I teach. My classes were super popular and they weren't for everybody, and that's fine. I'm good with that. Dizzy's done a bunch of hunting. Cool. FOID cards, yeah. Of course, you don't have to have a FOID card if you're non-resident, fortunately. Yeah, and what in the world Martin Luther King had to do with FOID card, although I could argue it might have had to do with the Gun Control Act of 1968 going into effect anyway, but that might have been part of that. What was the first ammo you ever fired? For me, it was 22 long rifle. Glock 26 40 caliber is a subframe. A Glock 26 is 9mm. The 27 is 40 caliber. They're both really, they're short. They're wide, but they're short. And they've pretty much become obsolete by the Glock 43. Because the 43 it's a single stack and it's thinner, although the 26 is probably a little bit better gun. Unfinished projects. I see tons of videos with guns, uncountable. Yeah, right, but not live streams. That's a big difference. Big difference. Most of the old parts, I've never had an issue with a 1911. I prefer them because you empty the mag, you can use a bludgeon. You run 1911s hard, you will. You can't run a 1911 in the dirt and the heat and the grit and everything, 500 rounds without the thing having a malfunction. You can't do it. They have to be oiled. Like, I've taken 1911 operators classes, and you can see the people who will stop at break time. Like, if we get an hour, not an hour, but if we would get a break on, say, an hour, just like a break to recharge mags, I would have my mags recharged ahead of time. I took a bunch of mags with me because I needed to try to give a quick and dirty cleaning to the gun and put a little bit of oil on it because those things need that. Bad Tree Blake says, my first rifle was an octagonal barrel breakdown single shot 22. Gramps said, aim good, shoot once, which is true. Lars has got up a link to something with Tactical Response. I will say Tactical Response is a great school. I can highly recommend training at. I've trained there many times. Knew the late James Yeager, good dude. They still have a good crew down there. Highly recommend you going to train with those guys. Car Crushing Cowboy is here. Clayton's Toolbox. Excuse me. Captain Deuce talking about a 45 APC, or they call Colt 1911. You talking about an ACP 45 automatic? they're good, but here's the thing about the 1911. 1911s have to have a lot of tuning done on them. And car guys often like the 1911s because of that. Guys who like to tune carburetors, for example, and like to build engines, they like 1911s because they can work on them. The 1911s got 3 times as many parts as a Glock. But 1911s have to have the extractor tuned. And also, the original 1911s, the ones that famously were used in 2 world wars, which is what 1911 guys always say. I could write a whole book called Things 1911 Guys Say. I know them all. But they've added a lot of stuff to the 1911 after that. Like the big one is a grip safety, which added even more parts. And I think the 1911 design was better. The older ones were better. But that said, it's a good pistol. The reimagined versions, not so much. And also, a 1911 is made to fire 45. When people have tried to change it to run other rounds, it becomes less reliable because a 1911 has a very steep feed ramp. It has a fixed barrel, right? So those kind of things are conducive only to that little short 45. The short 45 with the ball ammo is what they're made to run. When you start deviating from that, you're asking for more problems. Need a high point? Nah, no thanks. I don't need a burner gun. Grand Pito Vic wants to teach him young. That's cool. Car Crushing Cowboy was supposed to have a snow day in Dallas, mostly rain. I got a phone call from Dallas Monday, but it was a scammer. It was a pretty good scam. I wound up making a police report out of it. Hopefully I slowed him down a little bit. Started shooting in scouts with BB guns and 22 single shots. You know what? So I know some guys who got their YouTube channel canned and lost a 340,000 subscriber YouTube channel because their firearm training school had Girl Scouts take a rifle class and they were shooting the AR-15s chambered in 22, the M&P 22s, because the Boy Scouts are not allowed to shoot real firearms. Or maybe they can, but they might have to be 22, or there might be some kind of requirement for bolt or something like that. Girl Scouts, however, can shoot anything they want. That never made it into the Girl Scouts. So apparently one of the woke overlords at YouTube decided that alone was that training class was violent content, and they canned the guy's channel. He lost a monetized 340,000 sub channel for that. Does the 1911 get ammo jam? Badly. Again, you know, in all nice conditions and all of that stuff, they'll shoot, they'll cycle, but the 1911 is finicky. It is more finicky. It just is. The best thing you can do is run factory loaded ammo and run good mags. I think the best mags to run in those are Wilson Combat. If you're going to run a 1911, get the Wilson Combat mags. They're not cheap, but they're very good. A lot of people like the Chip McCormick, but I like the Wilson Combat. I think the follower's really good. 1911 might be, I think it's probably the only gun that I think runs better with aftermarket mags than the factory. The only one. 2/3 of the engineering in a firearm is in the magazine. And the factory 1911 magazines left something to be desired. Grandma Vic says, where will we take classes with you and do you provide the gun? Yeah, I have a fleet of loaner Glock 19s as needed. So I can generally accommodate a loaner if you need it. As far as taking the classes, so I used to have a regular place here. I taught every month. It was great. But when he closed up right before COVID, he retired, turned in his FFL and everything. He closed down his retail location, and that left my class sort of homeless. But that said, I still taught a lot of classes. There's a local church here that's hosted me many times, and I used to teach actually for the Real Estate Association. Super popular class. We had 20 people in there one time. Huge class. Had to have help teaching it. But yeah, I still have done classes here. Just not with that same regular schedule. And so I haven't taught a class in a couple of years now, and I want to get one together for Middle Tennessee. That'll be my first class back in a while. Clayton's Toolbox says, I have the older M&P and 45 ACP super reliable. What do you think of the M&P? M&P is a great pistol. So Glock had the original design, and Smith & Wesson had an inferior semi-auto, and they basically poached some talent from Glock to come over and redesign their semi-auto. And then you had the M&P, and it was a much improved design. So the M&P is a good piece. The full-size M&P, the M&P 2.0, the Shield, all good. They all run, and it's because of talent they poached from Glock. But I still think it has a little bit of unnecessary complexity in it that Glocks don't. But they're good pistols. I can't find any fault with them. AK's not loud. Shoot my 30-06 for black powder. I took an AK operator's course one time. Sonny Pazikas. Man, you want to be careful what you wish for if you say you want to train with Sonny. One of the drills we did is one of your training partners would lay the barrel over your shoulder and shoot, and use you for a prop, a rest for the muzzle. You better have your ear pro ready for that, let me tell you. Tactical Tupperware. Take a training class, man. You'll love it. Yep, there's accidents, and there's also negligent discharges. And most people who have a negligent discharge will call it an accident. And what that is the lack of accountability. Been very fortunate in my class. Very little of that. And everything's safe, controlled. Nothing was ever unsafe. And never in the advanced classes. It's always in the beginner classes. Ron says, I still have my first shotgun, my second shotgun, my third, and my first rifle. Cool. Sold his second rifle to make a house payment, traded him in 1911 for a 383 Mopar. Right on. New City Carpet. I'm familiar with black powder too. I really like the 5.7. You talking about like an FN 5.7? That little neck down hot little cartridge. All the competitors around my area running 2011s, the double stack 1911s. Yeah, a lot of people like that. I see some of both here. And thing is games with guns with competitions, that's great. I've done it. I've shot plenty of competition. Not really my bag. I like it though. I do think that the game portion of it has just completely overcome how compatible it is and relative to real life. I mean, I suggested one time at a match, people were talking about all this crazy administrative stuff they do at matches. And I just said, man, we should just leave our guns loaded in the holster the whole time at the match, just like we do everywhere else. They looked at me like I was the Antichrist. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing. But they do it all the time at these matches. And guess who has the negligent discharges at match? It's where they happen at matches. And one of the worst, I can make a whole topic on this. One of the worst things ever at competition, ever, is the stupid unload and show clear dance that they do after their run. It's the worst thing ever. It is teaching something stupid and dangerous. They take out the mag, jerk the slide back, and then just habitually snap the trigger. Worst thing ever, because they're making pressing the trigger part of the unloading process, which it is not. Pressing the trigger is part of the shooting process only. And they're teaching people to just pull the mag, run the slide, snap the trigger. Who actually checked for an empty chamber doing that? They don't. They just get in the habit of, this. And then occasionally, about one in a few hundred, boom. Well, they taught them to do that. So I have several problems like that with competition and how people think it relates to daily carry. And then most of those guys, they unload everything and put all the race guns away, then leave the range unarmed. I had a sign in my classroom that says, don't forget to reload your gun before you leave. Whatever gun you're happy to own, make sure you're proficient with it. Right. I will say they're varying degrees of efficiency, and you want to own and carry and make yourself proficient with the gun that if you have to be in a gunfight with, you want to have. Play with a 45-70, yeah. That's a serious round. You shoot wheel guns too? Yeah, I have. I like revolvers. I was a revolver guy before I was a semi-auto guy, and then once you go, that's it. Someone hands you weapons, says it's not loaded, check it anyway. That's the number one rule of firearm safety: is all guns are always loaded. That should be your default mentality. I handle guns at gun shows that appear to be unloaded. I handle them just like they're loaded. But if you work at a gun show, you work a booth at a gun show, you will be muzzled 100 times a day by people who have no concept of that. Lars has a comment here. Looks like a quote from Yeager. The best accessory for a gun is training. A set of sights helps one gun. Training helps you with all your guns. James Yeager? Yes, indeed. I knew the late James Yeager. Good dude, solid. We lost him to ALS at 52 years old. But that dude, if there was a Mount Rushmore of training, he would be on it. 45 long Colt is fun. Sure. Mark Phipps, I like my wheel guns as much as my semi-autos. Cool. This is America, man. You have whatever you want to have. Dizzy asks if a Python will be a good investment. Sure. I mean, guns are a good investment. They go up in value. You would probably make more money in the market, but guns are not losing. Mostly old parts and Russ Patrick is here. What's up? Well, here's what's up. I decided to do a little bit different live, so I did it on a different night, on a Thursday, and this is all about firearm training. And so most people know me as the obnoxious talking head on Fridays that promotes the No Name Nationals, but a lot of people don't know is I've been a firearms instructor, professional firearms instructor for 15 years. And so that's all this stuff's about. It might be just a different topic, different time. See how it goes. Big Bad Jones says, I personally like the SIG P226. I ran them in class and haven't had trouble. I could shoot them better than the Glocks myself. They're okay, but then this, I can't remember the number. Is a 226 the one that has the external hammer, has a decocker on it? I'm not sure. Sarah Canadian Diesel, how's it going? Tonight's topic is guns. Never done a gun topic live. So, just interesting. There's Street Fox Mike. How's it going, sir? Hey, Colleen's been floating around. Mark Phipps says, my large caliber rifle and the lever rifles are lots of fun. I agree. I love a Winchester 94. I'm all about that. If we were living in a time when somehow I did not have an AR-15, which won't happen because wherever I'm standing is America and mine's not leaving my hands. Okay, but let's just say I didn't. My jam would be a Winchester 94. I like the lever. When are you doing a shooting class? I haven't taught in a couple of years, but I really want to have one this spring in Middle Tennessee. And you guys would be invited. I want to do it as a fundraiser for No Name National. So just take the regular tuition. I'll cover the overhead of the class itself. And then in gross, put that in the No Name National's general fund. Aunt D says, I've been running and carrying a 9mm shield for years, thinking about getting a SIG 365. I got to tell you, the M&P 9, that is my backup gun. That's what I carry at 8 o'clock on my person. Those are great guns. The SIG 365 is okay too. I've had people bring them in classes and they run. I would prefer the shield over the SIG 365. It's got a little bit more to grip. And what I think people don't think about is that you're gripping a gun to start with. How many fingers are you gripping a gun with? Somebody in the chat tell me, how many fingers are you gripping your gun with? Assuming it's a one-handed grip. We'll just go from there. Because sometimes I ask this question in class when we do our range portion. Rob's Rosin Streetcar says, there's a cowboy action range next town over. It gets competitive. Yeah, I know a guy who does that here, and I haven't been out to shoot with him. He's a cool old dude. I might do it sometime. If I do it, I guess I'd film it. Bopar's Mustangs and Minivans says, my worst experience was jamming a 38. Bad trigger discipline, I get it. I don't know why that would be jamming a 38. If you're talking about a 38 revolver, it was probably something in the action. But the trigger discipline would be separate from that. Colleen says 3. That's the right answer, Colleen. 3. That's correct. So you're only holding the pistol with these three fingers. Okay. And how a lot of NDs happen is when this finger gets involved in the grip, because that's your trigger finger. And then your thumb, you'd shoot better if you didn't have a thumb. So you're gripping it with three. So when you get those small pistols, well, now you can't get the pinky on there. So now you got two fingers holding the gun. So to me, I like to have a grip where I can get all three of those fingers on it. And so a Glock 19, Glock 43 is a fuzz too small. Shield, you can just barely. Peckerwood Custom is asking, I missed a bit where you mentioned the class later in the year. I'm thinking about maybe doing a class in Middle Tennessee. I'm thinking about it for this spring, potentially. Matt Travers says, new shooter here. I recently bought a new Smith & Wesson Model 27. Rock on, man. My recommendation to you is before you buy your second gun, buy your first training class. Not stumping for mine, but take your first training class. And by the way, in the description of this video, I have places I recommend training. And they are all places I have trained. I don't recommend any place I haven't trained. 2.5 fingers gripping on the shield depending on the mag, which is true. I try to get away from gripping on the mag. Guys will say, oh, it's all the same with the longer mag. You still get 3 fingers on there. No, because if you need to drop the mag, now your pinky is holding on to the mag. So it's like guys will say, well, I can get a Glock 26 with a longer mag and it's the same as a Glock 19. No, it is not. Because if you have all 3 fingers on the stock of the gun, you drop your mag, the mag comes out. One mag out, in, run your slide back on the target. You can't do that where you're gripping it with the pinky. You can, but again, it's something else you got to think about. And if you're actually using it in a gunfight, the last thing you want to do is have self-imposed hurdles consuming the CPU of your mind. Yeah, you guys will be invited. I actually been talking about it the last, couple of weeks, but we'll see what we can put together. You guys be welcome to come out. Matt Travers says, love the old style blued revolver. Me too. I think they're beautiful. But do know, you and Jackie Cumming will split you up opposite ends of the line. And you guys can debrief the whole thing, talk about what all you learned after class. But I always separate couples on the firing line. Rob says, I have some big hands. I had to get larger grips, lots of mag extensions. Well, then just get a full-size pistol. I carry a full-size pistol. My hand must be like, if you took all the metrics for the range of hands the designers use, I must be exactly in the middle, because most people complain about the finger grooves on a Glock 17 on the 4th gen, and my hand fits it perfectly, not over or under. So I must be like that exact average or whatever. I don't know. Because it doesn't bother me. I don't even notice them. But a lot of guys complain about them. So they'll get a generation, 1, 2, 3, or 5 to get away from that. But to me, it was never a problem. Already started training. Right on. Good deal. I'm telling you. And training will save you money. Because, like, for example, a lot of guys say, I don't want to spend $500 on a training class. Because there's some classes, $500, $600, $800, depending on where you take them. My one-day class was under $100. But you'd be surprised how much it saves you, because then instead of winding up with an entire box of holsters you don't wear anymore, you learn the right holster to start with. So definitely something else to train with when dropping the mag, right? A session before. See, that's the thing. That's just, oh my gosh, that would just be, man, I don't know about that. I mean, I would never say never, but man, that would be a big one to pull off. Sure, I probably could logistically, but man, that would be something to make happen. Try not to shoot yourself in the foot. Good reason to get training. We work from the holster dry with the more advanced class. My beginner class, we don't work from the holster at all. We substitute the holster with a barrel. So they use the barrel in lieu of the holster. But then that works good for going to the next level where we come from the holster. But I have a simple three-step draw, and it works really well. Later, Dizzy. We'll see you, man. Grand Pito Vic still has 2 30-round mags for a Glock 19. worthless to load, more of a conversation piece. They don't have a lot of practicality. I will say the only time I've used those extended mags, Glock factory extended mags for the 9mm, is when I would train at Glock. I've taken their instructor development course, and they let you shoot a Glock 18, which is the machine pistol. And it's like, I don't know, it's like 12 or 1,400 rounds a minute. That thing is gnarly. And of course I use 31 round mags for that. I don't, I want to be able to put as many rounds through that as I can. Unfinished projects is I haven't held a lot of semi-autos, but the Glock 45 feels good. And when he says Glock 45, he's talking about the 9mm Glock model number 45. He likes the Bodyguard. I will say, when you take good training that shows you how to grip and how to press your trigger and everything and how to use your sights, it will change what pistols feel good to you and which ones don't. It will change things, especially when you work on the two-handed grip. Andy likes the size of the shield and 365 for conceal. It's small and light enough to carry. I conceal a full-size Glock 17 under a T-shirt all day, and I will tell you, a whole lot of concealment is your belt and your holster, both your belt and your holster. So you really have to have an inside waistband holster. That's a big deal. If you have outside waistband, it's pretty much for these Arctic climates where you just wear a coat all the time inside and out. But really, inside the waistband holster is where it's at. And then you need the right belt. The belt I wear is just crazy heavy. It's an SOE, everyday carry belt. It's 1.5 inches, 1/4 inch thick of, I don't know, it's like 1,000 denier nylon. It's really, really heavy duty. But that's the kind of belt you need to support your holster. I knew a guy one time that said that his holster just felt terrible, felt so uncomfortable, it was awful. And I said, well, what kind of belt are you wearing? He said, it's the holster, it's the holster. I said, what kind of belt are you wearing? And he was wearing some kind of J.C. Penney reject, penny loafer belt. And I gave him a loaner belt. He said, oh, man, that's so much better. That changed everything. I said, yeah, no kidding. Because now it fits tightly and it supports all of the weight of the gun. And it's amazing how much difference that makes. The right belt changes everything. Oh, and also a great thing is the soft loops on your holster. If your holster has a metal clip on, an ulti-clip is okay, but I would prefer to take that off and chuck it, especially if it's any springy clip. Take that thing off and throw it away. They tear up your chairs, they tear up your cars, they get caught on stuff, you get your hand cut on them, they're junk. Take those off, get a pair of soft loops. You can get them from NSR Tactical. You'll never go back. They are the best. Here's a link to T-Max, which is Pat McNamara, great instructor. Highly recommend training with him. Aunt D says, yeah, we got that one. This cat right here, never seen you before, but welcome. Low and left how to fix. Low and left how to fix is generally going to be a right-hand shooter mashing the trigger disproportionate to his or her grip. Disproportionate to his or her grip. What I mean by that is the better your grip is, the more aggressive you can get with the trigger. If you watch competition shooters and they look like they are just wailing on that trigger, it's because they are, but shake hands with one of those guys. They can crack a walnut, the grip those guys have. It's crazy. You have to have the grip. So with a new shooter, I teach them how to get the grip right. I show them how firm it needs to be. And it's always like, ooh, that's too much. But that's what it takes to keep the gun from sliding out of your hand. And when you watch guys at the range, they shoot. You can always tell people who don't really, never worked on their grip. This is what it looks like. They shoot, they readjust. They shoot, they readjust. It's because the gun's moving in their hands because the grip isn't right. So learn how to make your grip, and then what you do is you press your trigger straight flat to the back. And we work on this in class, different things, how your finger imparts different things on it, the biomechanics of slacking the trigger, how you press on the frame. We get into all that stuff in class, but you're going to work on your trigger press, and when your grip is good, you can keep improving how quickly you can press that trigger with accuracy. But I guarantee you, low and left is always a right-handed shooter presses the trigger too aggressively for the amount of grip that he has or she has every time. If you ever you ever buy a used pistol and the sights are moved over to the right, guarantee you. One of the funniest ones was the place I used to teach. They were a gun store. They did all kinds of repair work. They had an armor, in house and everything. This dude brought in it was a Smith & Wesson Shield. And he brought it in and said, this thing needs to go back to Smith & Wesson. It's super inaccurate. And he provided a target. Oh, I wonder if I can find that. If I can find the picture of that, it is worth showing. I don't know if I can. But anyway, he brings the pistol in. And he says, it's got to go back to Smith & Wesson. Oh, man, I hope I can find that. I really hope I can find it. Let me see if I can find it real quick by maybe there's a chance. Oh yeah, I did. Sure enough, I found it with the map. Okay, this is the target he brought in on a Smith & Wesson Shield that he shot this at 7 yards, supported from a table at 7 yards with a Smith & Wesson Shield. That was his target. And that was his evidence that the gun was defective. And he and let me see if I can't, I'm not going to show the guy's name. I can't do that to him. Let me see if I can do this. Okay. I think I can do this. Okay. I've got this up to where his number's not, because he's a good dude. And I'll tell you another part of the story too. Okay, gun has been fully adjusted to the right and is still shooting far left. You see on the repair tag, right? So they see the dude that owned the store. I can't show the guy's info, but here's the gun. Here's the gun. Yeah, I was right. It's a little Shield, right? Brand new. You can tell it's just like still smells like new car smell, right? They took the gun in, and then Jason calls me and he says, hey, man, got a gun here. We want you to shoot it when you come in. So I took it out there, and I made the mistake of just chasing it. I should have just made a group. So anyway, I put in 2, and I was kind of playing with the sights. He said, no, just make a group. So I made a group there. That's at 7 unsupported. And sure enough, look where the sights. He moved the sights up and to the right to compensate for the low and the left. So anyway, Jason took it. We put the sights back in the middle, and I stacked a group on that nickel or whatever we'd use there. And then he staples one of my flyers to it, and he says, the gun has been fixed. Sights were misadjusted. To fix the problem, take this class. That was so much fun. Anyway, the dude, he took it all in stride. He and his wife came to the class. He learned a lot, had a good time, and he got considerably better. He got considerably better. So kudos to him. There's a lot of guys who would never have done that. Masad Ayub says it's a handgun, not a hands gun. You need to learn both. You need to learn how to shoot with your left hand, your right hand, and both hands. Grampito Vic says, when I decided to actually learn firearms was when a drug dealer in 1988 was cleaning a Tech 9, heard the magazine empty and the ambulance. The cleaning a gun when something happens is a cover story, and it's a bunch of crap. It's when somebody does something stupid, violates the safety rules, and they always say they were cleaning it because they can't just admit to screwing around with it needlessly. That's what actually happens every time. The story always starts with, well, I was cleaning it. Why do you need to clean it? You haven't fired 100 rounds to it. Why are you cleaning it? Hippie Miller Mechanics every day with a 25 in my pocket. 25 they're cool little guns, but I would strongly recommend upgrading to a 9. They make 9s small enough now, and they're much more reliable. And you can get ammo even cheaper for them, considerably. Pull up and right. No, you don't. No, he just readjusted his sights. He was mashing the trigger relative to his grip, and he was probably also looking over the sights. I got ways I try to help people break those habits and fix it. It's a lot of fun. BNR says that his boss carried at the shop that he used to work in. Yeah. Well, actually, you can do that in your place of business. There is different rules for business owners in Illinois. When is the next class? I may do something in Central Tennessee this spring. That's actually kind of what I'm looking to do. But around here, I haven't. There's a church who's been really good to host me over the years. I've taught a lot of classes there for a few different churches, but there's one that does. But we have our classroom portion in the church, and then we have our range portion somewhere else. I was 12, so I believed it. Trust me, dude, that's still the cover story to this day. I was cleaning it and always the story every time. Concealed a Desert Eagle. I wouldn't conceal a Desert Eagle. As much as you pay for those things, you ought to wear them proudly. Put a big sign on your back with an arrow that points to it. I remember one time I was working a gun rights booth for Virginia Citizens Defense League, and we had a raffle gun. We had a Glock raffle gun sitting on the table, and those people were having a cow saying we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. We couldn't have such a thing. They were carrying on about it. So they were trying to find a rule to throw us out of a festival, even though we weren't breaking the law. They were just being complete and total jerks about it. So one of our volunteers said, hey, man, that's the same gun as I carry anyway. I'll put it in my holster. And we put a big sign on his back with an arrow pointing to us, says, with this gun. Then they didn't have anything. Anyway, that went on for years, those people. It was awful. But I'll tell you, though, taking good training, though, will change your life. Just all kinds of little things you learn, philosophical things. I will tell you is that this right here was inspired. That orange number paper was inspired by the late James Yeager. He would say that my calendar doesn't have one of these days on it. My calendar doesn't have one of these days on it. And then I say my calendar has 365 opportunities to set goals. And so when you think about that, he would also say the clock and the calendar wait for no one. And you guys probably heard me say that, which is true. And that if you don't have a deadline, it's not a goal. It's just a dream. So doing is greater than dreaming, and we give you the deadline. So see, that actually came from my years of firearm training. So for those of you who never knew the origin story of that, there it is. That's where that came from. Wow, we've got 4 countries represented in here. 5, because I did see one person here from Massachusetts. Yeah, another one of the things that we learned at Tactical Response, and it was a philosophy there, which I think is just so important. And it says a lot about where people kind of stall out and have problems with their training is that the hierarchy of your priorities should be mindset first, tactics second, skill third, and gear fourth. Think about that for a minute. So your mindset is number one. That's going to answer a lot of questions. It's going to answer, did you get training? Were you prepared before you left the house? Did you carry what you need to have? Do you have medical trauma training? Have you answered all these questions? Have you worked on your skills? Mindset answers all of that stuff. And then the next thing is tactics. If the right tactic is to run, that's going to trump any amount of skill you have, right? So tactics comes second. Then skill comes third after that, right? So how well can you shoot? Well, assuming you had enough sense to bring your gun, and assuming that you should actually be there instead of shouldn't, then your skill comes into play. And then the last thing on the list is gear. I mean, worst, you find some inept security guard, rip that gun out of his holster, go to work, right? I mean, gear is last. But most people work that list completely backwards. They buy a gun, then they go shoot without any training to practice. They never really develop the kind of skill they should. And then tactics are just kind of something to bench race about, and mindsets was never there. So they work the list backwards and they stall out very low on the list. It's a shame. 253 is how many days until the no-name nationals. That's what that is. Big Bad Jones says the police department in my town raffles off firearms in city. Yeah. Yep. That's not uncommon. That's cool. I mean, you won't see it in little woke run towns, but that's cool. We used to do a lot of them as fundraisers for the Virginia Citizens Defense League. which is the premier gun rights organization in the state of Virginia. And I think they are considerably more effective than the NRA. But that's a whole other deal, a whole other conversation. The NRA, the biggest thing that they do is that in Virginia, you've got 2 tracks you can go to have teaching credentials. You can go with the DCJS, which is the government side of things, which I have not wanted to get involved with. I have a colleague of mine who does, so, and then the other is the NRA. They'll accept your NRA credentials for training too. So that's the route I choose to go. I don't teach NRA's curriculum though. Do the Shields complete the training courses? Yeah, they do. They'll run through them just fine. They'll make it through. I don't see, and here's the thing. So here's an interesting thing. One time, and John Farnham has given us this statistic. He said that one time somebody wanted to figure out what's the average number of rounds that a gun gets shot in its life. And when you average all of them together, the ones that sit on coffee tables and never get fired, and the high mileage guns, which are extremely rare, and you average all the guns together, the average number of shots through guns is 7. Now you can say, oh, well, I've shot mine hundreds of times. Yeah, you have. But then there's always that dude that has 100 guns just to have them and has never shot any of them. And so anyway, by the time you add up, the average comes out to 7. So the guns that come to my classes usually don't have hardly any rounds through them. Many of them have had their first shots taken with me in the class, which is gratifying when it's not just the gun's first shots, but the students' first shots. That's pretty cool. It's always really cool. It's a bit special. People take lots of photos, which is great. But yeah, the new guns, we have to make sure to, wipe them down good, oil them good, so they'll run. But they do. And you're doing yourself a favor getting good ammo, like good factory loaded ammo. I use Federal. I've had good luck with the Winchester ammo. But Federal is probably my #1 brand for just like range fodder and training stuff. What Walmart used to sell, the old Federal Champion. Love it. Been shooting it forever. Land Yacht Garage is here. Cool. Clint Smith's got a video on shotguns, which is cool. Clint Smith said handguns put holes in people, rifles put holes through people, and shotguns take chunks out. He is correct. You know what? And now that I found this picture. Here's a picture from one of our rifle builder classes we used to host. Those were fun. We get 6 students together and you put your rifle together like a Build-A-Bear workshop. So one day learning how to be an AR armorer, and then the next day on the range to be an AR operator. Good stuff. Had a lot of fun doing that. A lot of students have smiles when they shoot a group like that at 5 yards unsupported. Good stuff. Every now and then we'd have a movie at lunch. I think in that when I showed that movie Terror in the Mall, which is an interesting one to debrief. So they were mesmerized by that one. What else do I have in here? I don't know. It's just whatever picture the wall of my classroom. Got the med bag, a fire extinguisher, 12 sets of electronic ears. I don't know what all else I have in here, but anyway. Whatever. Picture me teaching. Whatever. Can't talk much about an AR if you own one in Illinois. If you think it's time to bury your guns, it's time to dig them up. What is that goofy stuff with ARs in California where they have some kind of ring you wear and some kind of hidden release button to get the back out and all that stuff? stuff. Craziest stuff. Oh, and they have those goofy stops. I may have been buffering then. Yeah, when I've had people come in from states that deny their citizens the right to have armament, we always come up with loaners for them. It's never a big deal. Yeah, and that's one reason we like to have the no-name nationals in a free state like Missouri. I would always prefer to do things just in general in free states. Let me see here. I was looking for something. Yeah, so Lars is asking me about the everyday carry video I got. Yeah, you can put that up. It's in the description. I've got an everyday carry video I did a few years ago. I'm sure I should update it, but I just haven't. I could. It's not a lot different, but there are some things different. My light I carry is different, and there's just some changes. But if you're curious what I carry every day, that's the place. There's a link for that. Grandma Vic, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you coming in here. Aunt Dee says Massachusetts is half a step behind California. ARs and AKs can't be purchased new anymore, but Mini 14s are good to go. Mini 14s are jam masters. They don't make it through class. They struggle. But that said, it is ridiculous. And here's the link to that. So there's my 2017. That thing is 8 years old now. How many mags do you recommend for a training class? Depends on the training class. If you're shooting like a 500 round over 2 days or 1,000 round over 2 or 3 days type of training class, man, if you're using a standard capacity firearm that holds, say, 15 rounds or 17 rounds or so, man, I like to have 6-8 mags for that. You can do it with 3, but man, that's a lot of. See, here's the problem. The problem with that is you will spend more time trying to charge your magazines and have less time to actually pay attention and run out of ammo. Sometimes you run out of ammo in the middle of the drill. They try not to run you through, most classes try not to run you through, 3 back-to-back mags, but some do. And I love his training, great dude, highly recommend him. The worst for that is Tom Gibbons. That dude will not give you time to recharge your mags. In fact, I don't know how many magazines I took to his class one time. I would have like 3 or 4 in one back pocket, 3 or 4 in the other back pocket, a couple in the front pocket, one in the gun. I was just drive as many as I can because I know he's like this. And he still wants you to have loose rounds in your pockets. So between, taping targets, you're just sitting there stuffing rounds in the mag as fast as you can. And I would recommend have a bunch of loaded mags and load them up before class. And if you get chastised for showing up to class with loaded mags, it was not a class worth going to. I'm just serious. Sometimes you need to have an empty mag for the purpose of doing like a malfunction drill or something like that, and empty mag. So if you want to leave one empty for that reason, sure. Oh, and rifle classes. Gosh, for rifle classes, really what works great is try to have double what your rig carries. So if you've got a chest rig, say, that holds 4 magazines, go with 8 plus 1 in the rifle, maybe 1 in your pocket, 8 or 10. That's usually what I would do, 10 or 12 for a rifle class. Because what that does is, let's say you run back for a hydration break, doing bounding drills. Instead of sitting there wearing yourself out trying to load 120 rounds, during a water break, and not even resting at all, you can trade the mags out, trade out your empties, trade them for fulls. Then you can leisurely load, drink your water, and if you don't get them all loaded, you don't have to freak out. Gives you more time. The NR has 9 and 10 millimeter handguns. I do too. I like 10. 10 is a good round. This is as good a place as any to tell the story of how 10 millimeter. If people don't know where we got 40 caliber, what it was is the FBI lost a shootout in 1986 with criminals planting Maddox in Miami. And they were shooting 9 millimeter and revolvers. And the loss of the gunfight, they wanted to blame on the ammunition. A bigger caliber would have helped in maybe one of those cases, but by and large, it's never really that. So what they did was they said, we're going to go to 10 millimeter. The FBI went to 10 millimeter, and it had too much recoil, especially for the females. They were having trouble qualifying with it. So what they did is they shortened up the Smith & Wesson, took a 10 and shortened it up a little bit and called it 40 Smith & Wesson. And that in itself is one thing. But then what they did is they shortened it up and say, hey, now we can get this in a small frame 9mm pistol. And that became a problem because it's too high a pressure round for the 9mm smaller frame. So 40 is kind of a weird, mostly obsolete cartridge. You don't see many places loading 40 like you used to. So 9 is good, 10 is good, 40 is that weird one in the middle that, you know. But 40 caliber is kind of like a computer-controlled carburetor. It's that failed evolutionary step between carburetors and fuel injection. That's what 40 caliber is. Somebody will have a 40. They won't like me saying that. Whatever. Try to go to a professional training class and borrow a 40 caliber magazine and see what happens. ARs have to have some weird modifications to be sold in Delaware, I bet. I can see that. What was this Lars putting up? Yeager's got a video. 10 millimeter is 40, but for men, yeah, there you go. That's about right. Does 40 actually cycle in a 10 millimeter? I think somebody tried that on YouTube once, and it may sort of try, but remember the case is not registering right because the round is too short. So probably what it's having to do is just use inertia of the round to slam the extractor over, to be my guess. I don't really know. I don't try to do stuff like that, but I don't know. And I don't get into that. I mean, here's the thing. 9 is the most popular pistol cartridge in the world for a reason. I believe the very first 9 was in 1898 by George Luger. And I think he got the patent and everything, and it was in mass production by 1902. Evans Mopars, which Glock would you recommend for conceal and carry? Glock 19 is a wonderful answer. I would recommend it over any of the other 3 you said. All day. The 26 is basically a 19 that you can't get one finger on. And when people, here's the funny thing too about what people say about concealment. They'll say, oh, that's printing. Well, yeah, but you're twisted around. I mean, of course you are. You're tightening your shirt up over when you say that. People generally don't even notice if you are printing a little bit. The person who gives carrying away is the person who's carrying. Nobody is nearly as interested in checking you out and worried about you carrying and thinking you are than the person carrying. That's something people who are new to carrying a gun do. Thanks, that was an easy answer. Yeah, it really is. It really is. It really is. The 19 is wonderful in a lot of ways. You can get all 3 fingers on it, but there's no excess. The 26 is too short. The 43 is more backup gun size, and people like it because it's more convenient. But understand, I mean, what is the purpose you're carrying it for? Is it a rabbit's foot, or is it the tool that you're going to use to save your life with? And I say that you should carry the gun. Of course, we all make concessions. I mean, maybe we would want to carry a rifle all day, every day. Well, I make that concession to not do that. But I still do carry the handgun I would choose if I had to be selected for a fight. Of course, not of my choosing. I carry that pistol. Some finished project is looking for a 40. 40's out there. It's just, I'm just saying, it's you don't see them in training classes much for a reason. You do a little bit, man, not much. You would 10 years ago, you'd see them more, but even then it wasn't many. 20 years ago, you'd see a good number of them. It was kind of the new thing, but it wasn't the new thing. Carry the one that's comfortable and you can use. Don't carry the one that's comfortable. Carry the one that you can get good hits under stress with. Carry the one you want to be in a gunfight with. What makes a gun uncomfortable is a couple of things. One, you got to have the commitment to carry it. You have to get used to it. Okay. I mean, you're not going to carry a 2 pound lump on your side and just overnight get used to it. It's going to take time. And you need the right holster, and you need the right belt, and you need training with that gun. Once you've done that, you don't even think about wearing it. I carry all day, every day, have for over 2 decades, and I notice when I don't have it because I'm like, oh, my belt doesn't fit right. When I go to a courthouse, I feel like my pants are just falling off because my belt doesn't readjust easily. It readjusts, but I don't want to mess with it just to take a holster off. I have to go inside a courthouse. So I just leave it a little loose and it bugs me. But I'll notice if I'm not carrying versus if I am. If you can't shoot well, you might as well use grenades, old McDonald says. No, I wouldn't do that. That's a destructive device. That's what that's classified as. I would just learn to shoot. Dizzy's talking about faster bullets and shock value and all that. Well, generally speaking, the more velocity that a bullet has, the more likely the hollow point is to do what it's supposed to do. So, generally, yeah, that's what you're talking about. We want to have high velocity bullets. That's why you've seen a trend over the years of slug size going down. It's to get the velocity up. That's the reason why. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it hits as hard. That might be kind of a misnomer. But what it does do is it gives deep tissue penetration, like 18, 24 inches with a 9mm. And that's with a hollow point expanding. That's a lot. That's like a 1,400 foot per second 9mm, like a good Corbon or Defiant munitions or something, which is what I carry. It's good stuff. That's really what you want. That stuff people talk about knockdown power. It's nonsense. And if you can shoot a 45 well, you can shoot a 9 better. And I'm not saying, there's lots of people who shoot a 45 well and they can shoot it quickly. And that's all great. That's all great. But however well and however quickly you can get good hits with a 45, you can do even better with a 9, wherever your skill level is. And the gap in ammunition has just closed considerably. 30 years ago, a 9 had a significant advantage over, or a 45 had a significant advantage over a 9, but that is not true. The gap has closed as technology with, powders and propellants and the slugs and all that has changed. The gap is much closer now. Grand Pitovic training answers so many questions. It just answers so many questions. And the thing is that training is not somebody just does on the range. What you should do is get training and then practice your training. People will go and they will shoot. There's nothing wrong with just recreational shooting at all. This is America. You want to fill up a watermelon with tannerite and go shoot it. Go for it. That's great. That's great. Nothing wrong with any of that. But that is not training. So you want to practice your training, and you want to not just practice till you get it right. You practice till you can't get it wrong. Like if I wake up at 3 a.m. and needed to reach for a pistol, I would grip it properly because I've done it so many times. I would have to think about it to do it wrong. And you're only going to perform to the level of training that you've mastered. And where you really see this is in the shoot house, like force on force. You can tell the people who have gone to the range and they've thought through the stuff they're doing, and the people who've had training, many, many, many repetitions in training. It makes such a difference because that's what you're going to do under stress. I'll tell you what, force on force, we're using sim ammunition and literally getting in gunfights where everything is real except the ammunition and the malice. That's enlightening stuff right there. That's where I learned to carry a tourniquet every day. Man, it's interesting stuff. People think they're good at darkness and using a light. That's a good place to try it because the rounds go both ways. Watermelon with tangerine would be so fun with tannerite. Yeah. Won't save your life in a firefight. No, it's just fun stuff. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I would. There's a meeting I would go to, and every year after the meeting, we would have a fun shoot afterward. Blow up a little tannerite. It's just good stuff. Have you taught tactical, John? I just teach good training classes, and we work through the amount of material that the students can use. So, for example, if I have a group of students that needs it, we will do more dry practice. We will do more trigger presses. We will do more mastering of the grip, just working and working and working on that. And we always do malfunction clearances and that kind of thing. But sometimes the class is a little higher speed and lower drag, and we'll get into more stuff. We'll get into stuff like moving. We'll get into stuff that balances of speed and accuracy. I just basically go through that material. We use our time. If the class is getting tired or that kind of thing, then we may, stop a little early. If the class wants to keep going, sometimes go a little more, but it just depends. It all depends on what the class needs, what's best for the class. Heavens Mopar says, I'm a custodian in elementary school that works alone swing shift. I never feel in danger, but you never know. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a whole lot of people that didn't feel in danger before something bad happened. How do you carry a gun in a no-gun zone? How do you carry a gun? In a holster? I mean, if you choose not to carry where you're not allowed to, understand you're letting someone else appraise your life because of the fear of the consequences they can inflict on you. And you have to make that choice. I'll leave it at that. I absolutely would not tell anybody, hey, you're not to carry here, because that person is appraising the value of your life. It's easier to replace you than it is, say, an insurance payout or something. That's what they're telling you, Scott. That's what they're telling you when they say you can't carry. What kind of ammo do you recommend for training? Full metal jacket, jacketed hollow point, etc. My favorite training ammo is just regular old Federal Champion range ammo. And it's a full metal jacket, ball ammo, which is great for training. Works great for training, works great for practice. For daily carry, I like Defiant Munitions. Defiant Munitions is the offspring of Corbon. So Corbon was owned by the Pye family, Pete Sr. and Pete Jr. And Pete Sr. went to work they sold Corbon, and I don't know much about it since they sold it, but Pete Sr. went to Supervel, and now they make this really high velocity solid copper expanding round, which I'm sure is a whole lot like a Corbon DPX. And Defiant Munitions now makes a high velocity plated case solid copper or hollow point, not jacketed, but it's a hollow point, which I'm sure is also like a Corbon DPX, which was their premier line, which is what I carried. So I'm using the Defiant now, which I think you couldn't go wrong with either of those two, since that's what the Pye family makes, and that was their specialty. Unfinished projects that I only want brass, but the steel is usually cheaper. Well, I would stay away from steel in anything except those commie guns that are made to run it, because steel is hard on the extractor and it will wear more. Brass is much easier on the extractor on your pistol and your rifle. But if you're running a commie gun like an AK, SKS, or something, the extractors are huge on those things for a reason. It's because they're made to be running against that steel case. Yeah, I used to be able to buy a surplus. Well, I'll tell you, if you're looking for weird ammo, one place you can go is ammoseek.com. Ammoseek, AMMOSEEK.com. And you can find, you can just browse all kinds of weird calibers and it breaks it down on price per round. But if you're just looking to buy a quantity of training ammo, a great place for that is Ammo Supply Warehouse. Ammo Supply Warehouse is a good go-to for that. Let's see if I can find something. I used to have an inn at a place that sold ammo, a retail place. And when you train and teach and you shoot enough, when I buy ammo, I buy ammo. I mean, those are 100-round boxes. He would tell me, all right, and this is back when ammo was really hard to come by. You couldn't get it, right? And I'd say, hey, man, I need 5,000 rounds of 9. He says, all right, how much you want? So literally, I'm not buying boxes of 50. There's a link to ammoseek.com. That's a great site. Sign me. Well, if the class comes together. And there's a link to Ammo Supply Warehouse. Yeah, if you're just looking for quantities of 9 or 223 or something like that, that's a great place to buy it. They're good market prices. They're good to deal with. And they're patriots, too. So, good people. I was, I don't know why. I don't know if I saw it in the media or something, but I saw Tuesday, Katie Couric had a birthday. You guys remember Katie Couric? She was host of the Today Show and all that stuff. She interviewed a group of us once. And I didn't send her a cool birthday card. I guess I could have, right? But I didn't. But she was interviewing a group of us about guns and gun rights. And a couple of my buddies took her to the range. And then she puts this movie together that's, she produced a movie that was a hit piece on gun rights. And that was interesting. But anyway, I saw on something here, just reminded me her birthday was a Tuesday. But she doesn't rank high enough to get the cool card. What can I say? I don't know what the deal is with 380. 380 is a short 9. In fact, literally, it's 9mm Kurs. So instead of being 9x19, it's 9x17. There's just not a lot of reason to carry 380 today. It costs more than a 9. I would recommend 9. It's just, why, right? You got to realize there's a lot of things like that. Like the 380 is a caliber, like the Walther PPK, 32, and then, they had the 380. But really, in this day and time, just carry a 9. I wouldn't buy a 380 today in anything, really. Old McDonald said, are most Glock ammo jams caused by poor quality reloads? No, they can cause it. The number one reason is operator. Number one reason. I have had somebody tell me numerous times in a class, oh, this gun jams all the time. And I'll literally take it, I'll hold it out, I'll fire a whole mag through it and hand it back to him. Like, no way, that was just luck. I'm like, that was not luck. It's because I was holding on to the pistol so it would cycle. I watched you shoot. Your grip was too soft and you were not allowing the slide to cycle all the way. So half of the energy from the slide cycling was in your poor grip. So it didn't get to do its thing. It didn't get to finish extracting the case and ejecting the case. And then also, when you see people who get brass on the brim of their hat, that's the reason why. If brass is hitting the inside of the brim of your hat, you have a soft grip. And so part of the way you fix that, again, we cover this stuff in class, but what I teach is take this thumb on your support hand and you point it in toward the target. And so your fingers are at a 45 degree toward the ground. Your thumb is pointed straight forward toward the target. And when you wrap that under, and now you've got a better basis for your grip. And then if you hold on to that as you should, you won't have that problem. Here's an operator, Cave Dave. I ran into Cave Dave at James Yeager's funeral. So he knows what we're talking about. Welcome, Cave Dave. I'm doing something different today. That's why I'm doing it on a Thursday about firearm and firearm training. How about that? Andy says, what did you find failing in the Beretta 92s? Mine is jamming quite often. Only have 200 or so rounds, and it was brand new. Man, those things, they have a lot of moving parts. They get a lot of jams. That design just gets a lot of jams. I don't know. I do know the Beretta 92s, the MPs, the military MPs would carry them. Just not my kind of pistol, man. I will say, though, one thing you can do to really help matters is lubricate your pistol the way you're supposed to, run good quality factory loaded ammo in it, and get your grip proper. You need a proper grip. So once you have those three things, then you can determine whether or not it's the gun, because without those three things, you really can't. It's been an interesting evening, I guess. Still got 36 people in here, so must not be too dry and boring. Yeah, you talking about the? Yeah, that's why I recommend them. They do have good prices. You pay if you're paying retail at these retail shops like Academy and Dick's Sporting Goods and these places. I would not. Those are not the good places to get ammo. We love the Second Amendment. Yep, I think it's 27 words of prose. Yes, I do. I just like to make sure people understand that our right does not come from the Second Amendment. Our right is a right we were born with, and the Second Amendment merely codifies it. Dr. Go is here. Got here late, but read all the comments to catch up. Yeah, this is just a conversation about firearm training. We love your stories and knowledge. Oh, the story! I got all kinds of stories. That's a whole different thing. Oh my gosh. How does a typical class work? Sit down for less than... So typically the way I would do my one-day class, which is the class a lot of people use for their permit, but man, I have had people take that very class 8, 10 times for real. We would do the first half of the day in the classroom from 8 to 12. And that was all in the classroom, all good stuff. And then we would break for lunch and come back. And then the second half of the day from 1 to 5 was on the range. And it's private range. It's next to impossible to teach on a range where other people are doing stuff, especially where they'll get weirded out about the way you teach and what you teach. So private land is the way, but that's typically how we would do it. And then, when they would go back and get hydration breaks and all that stuff, if we needed to explain something or do demos and that kind of thing, that's when we would do it. Grand Pito Vic would take 1,000 rounds to range every week. That's a lot of rounds, man. It's a lot of rounds. I would cut the number of rounds down if in practice training on that. Get training with 500 of them and do dry practice. Make it last longer. Does he like Sportsman's Guide mail order? Yeah, sure. You like special self-defense ammo? Yeah, I mean, ball ammo is great for training and practice for carry and serious purposes, depending on what it's in. I use the same training ammo in my AR as I do for anything. I don't run anything but regular Federal 223 in it. But for carry, I use Defiant munitions. They're high velocity, solid copper, expanding 9. Good stuff. Really good stuff. Barrow's in the house. What's going on, man? Glad you could make it by. And that ammo's not cheap. But you know what? What's your life worth, right? And I don't chamber it but one time. So mag goes in, run the slide. That round's in. When that round comes out for any reason, it just goes in the range scratch. So it doesn't go back in the gun. And I do that because what you don't want to have happen is that round gets impacted several times when it goes into the gun. So you think about it, the slide's ramming into it once, hits the feed ramp once, hits the little step in the barrel once, the slide runs into the back of it once, and a couple of things happen. So when people take a round out all the time, put it in, first of all, you shouldn't be unloading and reloading your gun all the time. People do that stuff. You're inviting so much room for disaster that is totally unnecessary. If you have small children and you want to take the gun off at night, put it in the safe. Just leave it loaded. But anyway, besides that, when you're loading that round in and out all the time, one, you're slowly scooting the slug back into the case, which is making it higher pressure. If you want to test this, take a caliper and measure it. You will notice the overall length of the round shortens up. And something you can't see and can't measure is that eventually all of that vibration will hurt the primer. And so you'll get a good strike on it, it won't go off. So once rounds for serious purposes get chambered once, that's it. Training stuff, range scratch, I don't care. I'll run that back through, not a big deal. But for game time stuff, it gets chambered once, and then if it comes out for any reason, it goes in the range scratch. So if I go to, say, a training class, I don't want to shoot my expensive stuff from Defiant, I'll drop the mag, run the slide. Later on, if I'm range binding, picking up the stuff on the ground, I'll take that really nice, expensive Defiant round and I just throw it in the bucket with other stuff, just unused ordnance, make sure it's clean. I put it back into practice stuff and then just use another round to put in to carry. Barrows likes Federal. The stop box, I don't know what that is, but it absolutely sounds like something I wouldn't own. It sounds hackish. What is a stop box calling? Winchester was the worst for brass cord. I don't know. I don't reload. I don't know. Or I will tell you though, I've never seen anybody save money reloading. Not ultimately. All the guys that say they save money reloading have piles and piles of the stuff. It's a gun safe. Okay. Yeah, if you have small children, you want to put your gun in a safe, you don't have to wear it. The safest place for the gun should be on you, on your person in a holster. That's the safest place for your gun. When people have problems with children getting unauthorized access to firearms, the gun is almost always somewhere else where it shouldn't be, like a glove box, in the seat, in a purse. A gun rolling around loose in a purse is a horrible idea. If you want to carry a gun in a purse, it needs to, which I don't recommend, carry on your person. If you're a female, I don't want to carry on my person. Well, too bad. Either carry on your person or don't. You don't have to. It's America. But if you're going to carry in a purse or you're going to carry off body or a briefcase or whatever, affix a holster. Affix it, not loose. Bond the holster, sew it in, snap it in, whatever. Affix the holster to the inside of that purse. And then that's the only thing that goes in that pocket is the gun into the holster. Because when you see tragedies with unauthorized access, negligent discharges, children getting guns out of purses, it's never like that. It's never like that. When you see people, this is a common one, people no holster in a car, readjusting on a seat belt. I actually had a guy call me wanting me to be an expert witness for him in court because he torched around through his leg. He had a Beretta 92, flag number 1. But he had it, he didn't particularly have any guardrails as to how he handled guns because he carried on an empty chamber with a full mag. So he took this pistol and stuck it between his seat and the center console of this Mustang. It was one of those Mustangs like the one Colleen and Damien have. But he jammed it between his seat and his console. Then he wanted to take the gun out so he could adjust his seat belt. Well, what happened, he didn't realize when he jammed the gun in between the seat and the console, it crept the slide back enough that when it went forward, it took a round. So now there's a round in the chamber and he didn't know it. He grabs the gun out, grabs it with all his fingers like you're not supposed to, and bam, the gun went off, shot him in the leg. Then there was another dude called me for exactly the same thing. He, you can't make this stuff up. He used to work for a local muffler place in his Suburban, and he was a nice guy. He really was. But he was standing at this convenience store. It's here in town. It's this little small one, like a little 2 gas pump convenience store. And he's carrying a 1911 again, right? He's carrying his 1911 and some kind of outside the waistband, hog leg, Clint Eastwood looking holster or something. And a buddy of his, I think it was his cousin, walks in the store and says, "Hey man, is that your new gun? I want to see it." So they go out to his Suburban. His is a Chevy Suburban, and he's parked right in front of the store. And he gets in on the passenger side and he takes the gun out of the holster and he goes to unload it. And what does he do? He grips it with all the fingers, starts pulling the slide back, and bam, shoots around. It goes through his leg, in one side, out the other, hits the console, hits it was a Game Boy. It was a Game Boy in there, blast that in a million pieces. He never found a slug. Never found where it went through the floor or anything. They even put it on the lift in the muffler shop, shining a light. They never could find where. So we'd stopped in there somewhere. He still had it for the souvenir. But again, I mean, and he called me to go to court for him too. Actually, it was his lawyer who called me to go to court for him too. And the guy, it's a misdemeanor charge or something. But what I didn't like about it was, and I agreed to do it because I didn't think they were. The word is the only reason they charged him is because there were gas pumps there and they thought it was dangerous. And I said, well, that's BS. Cops get in shootouts at gas stations with gas pumps all the time. So that's not a fair standard to hold this guy to. So anyway, we go to court. I'm ready to testify or whatever. And the prosecutor walks out and she sees me there, and it's one of my students. She sees me there, says, "Oh, are you testifying for Mr. Such and Such?" His lawyer says, "Oh, well, that all depends." And they take a walk down the hallway and they dismissed it and came back because she did not want to put me on the stand. She was one of my students. So this guy just figuratively dodges a huge bullet, right? Like he gets it dropped. Everything's great. You know what he says? He says, "I'm afraid where my magazine's been sitting in evidence that it's lost tension, sitting there loaded." I'm like, oh my gosh. Dude, you just got away with this, and you're worried about a magazine that's downloaded at least 2 rounds. Like, worry about something else. But anyway, I'm 2-0 on doing that, but it's nothing I solicit. I'll put it like that. Reloading is for consistency and accuracy, definitely not for saving money. Yeah, if you want to do that stuff for your long-range guns, that's great. I do not recommend it for your daily carry stuff, really, or your pistols at all, but whatever people want to do. It's not worth with it. No, it's not, but I like factory-loaded ammo to stake my life on. Magazine springs are dirt cheap. Magazines are cheap enough. And here's the thing, too. It's not the magazine staying loaded and the spring staying compressed. It's the cycling of the spring. So if you cycle a magazine, 100 times by loading it and shooting it empty, it's the travel of the spring that puts the miles on it, not the staying loaded. You can take a magazine that's been loaded for literally 50 years and stick it in the rifle or pistol, and it will function fine. Provided it's not like gotten corroded or any of that. It'll function fine, as will the ammo. If it's been in dry storage, it's just fine. I have some rifle mags that I'm sure have been loaded for years, and I would no qualm whatsoever about shooting those. They would shoot and function just fine. Just like an engine valve spring. Yeah, like any spring. It's just like the springs on the chassis of your car. It's the miles that take the life out of them, not the sitting there loaded. Valve springs are the same way. Right. Well, but valve springs also have the component of heat. But yes, it's the cycling that puts the miles on them. Most mag springs never cycle enough to wear. Corrosion is another story. Well, they shouldn't be corroded if they're kept inside. Now, corrosion is a concern. Like if you take a rifle class in the pouring rain and you literally have like muddy water running out of them where they've been in the ground. Well, I mean, depending on where you train and what you train in, yeah, that's a thing. That is a thing. But you're exactly right. Most mag springs never cycle enough to wear. Most people don't shoot enough to get a magazine spring worn like that. So Colleen sent me whatever this safe is. It just looks like a gun box you can lock or something to me. I mean, I like, boxes that are appropriate for travel or such. I don't have any little ones here to worry about unauthorized access. But I mean, yeah, I'd recommend everybody here take good training, not just gun training, but if you're going to take one firearm training class, but also to get the philosophy that goes behind it, take fighting pistol tactical response. That's a great one. Oh, hey, Lars, can you dig up the link? Did I send you a link to Fighting Pistol, the free version? It's at libertv.com. Lars, if you're in here, if you could post that up, that'd be great. This is worth any of you to take a watch, and it's free. It's got a watermark on it that's annoying, but it's free. And the class is like $600, but you can get this online tutorial. It's free. And it's great. It's worth a watch. And if you want it without the watermark, you can pay for it. It's well worth the money, I can tell you that. Yeah, I'll watch the video. I see a picture. I'll tell you though, there are some of the so I have on my phone. I have a list of things that should not have been invented, and let's see if I can find this list of things that should not have been invented. And one of the things on my list are called safety bullets. It's one of the worst inventions I have ever seen. And the idea behind it is that you leave it in the chamber. And so the idea is you're going to run the slide and get that thing out of there so that it'll load a live round if you need to use the gun in self-defense. Well, there's all kinds of problems with this, right? You can imagine the problems. But imagine what happens if you accidentally shoot that thing and you wedge it in the barrel and you're trying to cram a live round in behind it. I mean, you'll split the barrel doing it. You'll cause real problems doing that. That could even be dangerous. What's your take on insurance? Well, first of all, it's not exactly truly insurance. You can't insure around the commission of a crime, which is often what you would be charged with. So it's not exactly insurance. I will say that USCCA very disappointingly declined to cover someone just based on their idea. They thought the person looked guilty, which that defeats the entire purpose of having it. If you want to get more info on products like that, I would recommend go check out Andrew Branca's YouTube channel. Look at a video where he talks about the various insurance products. CCW Safe is what he recommends. I know another lawyer who used to recommend USCCA, but I don't know if he still does after that person. They declined to cover them. A lot of people like the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network, ACLDN. That's good too. It's good too, but it's different. So I would check out your providers, but they all work a little bit differently. And one thing that's a huge help is that when you've trained with somebody, you have extremely better odds of getting that person to testify for you in court as an expert and material witness, both. So there's a plus, right? Like that's like a huge plus that I have if I have to go to court for a self-defense shooting is I got a lot of people that I can get in there potentially for expert material witnesses. Lars has a link to Andrew Branca on the Warrior Poet Society. Warrior Poet Society, good place for training and information too. John Lovell's a good dude. He's a good dude. And no, he does not bolt that hair on at night. His magnificent mane of hair is real. Yeah, cowboy action shooting is a whole different deal. It is a lot of fun though. They use wax bullets. It's good stuff. I know people who do it, and they have a ball doing it. It's cool. Good stuff. This is not a Friday, so I'm just hanging out. I'll stick around as long as you guys have energy or whatever. It's not really, I usually try to keep a real strict time frame on Fridays, but, just depends who's here. Same people. I see NSB just came in. NSB says, I've always heard to never modify your carry gun because it could be used against you. So I've heard that too. And Masayu has mentioned that you'll beat the rap on doing prudent, normal modifications to your gun. He said, but at that time, it would take about 25 grand worth of expert witnesses to discuss how none of that stuff means malicious intent or any of that. So, yeah. So on my carry gun, the one thing I do recommend you do is put a good set of sights on it. My favorite sight for fighting is an XS Big Dot on a pistol. That is, to me, the best, most advanced pistol sight there is. It's a big old glowing tritium white golf ball out there on the end of the slide in this shallow little V-notch, and they're great. And people who say they're not accurate, I call BS. I have won a long-range competition amongst 8 people one time, and I was the only one shooting those. And they are accurate. They do work. Grampito Vic's got work at 4:30 in the morning. Better you than me. Take care, man. Thanks for joining us. But yeah, NSB, one thing about modifying guns is a lot of people are trying to buy their way to a level of skill, and you're better off getting training. Really, you are. And the big one is modifying triggers. I really don't like people trying to modify triggers on guns. I don't like it a lot. The best trigger job you could do on your modern polymer pistol is put about 10,000 rounds through it. So it'll really polish down that connector. That's the best trigger job you can do, is put a bunch of rounds through it. My trigger winds up being under 5, but it's just because of how many rounds have been put through it. It's such a high round count. And when you actually look at the connector and everything in it, they are polished from use. And when you learn to reset the trigger like we teach in class, that second break is much lighter than the first. A lot of people don't realize that. It is lighter. You can measure it. If you actually press the trigger, keep it trapped, and then put your gauge on there and let it reset, you'd be surprised how much less it takes to press it the second time. NSB says, the only thing I do to my carry Glocks is replace the plastic guide rod. Here's the thing about the plastic guide rod. That guide rod is plastic for a reason. It's to allow it to flex with the recoil. Okay? And when you put a metal one in there, it won't do it. Now, I watched a torture test on a Glock one time where they put thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds through it. We're talking hot barrel, and then just hand off to another shooter. Bunch of rounds, hand off to another shooter. They got it hotter than you could ever get it. And they melted the guide rod. And the thing still ran. It started having malfunctions, but it was still running. The recoil spring had stayed in there in place enough that it was still working. So I don't recommend replacing the plastic guide rod on the recoil spring of a Glock. I do, if you are actually going to shoot your Glock enough to do it, like again, we're talking about 1 in 100,000 people, probably more than 10,000, will ever shoot one enough to. You should replace the recoil spring about every 5,000 rounds, but use a Glock one. And Aunt D's talking about a 10-pound trigger in Massachusetts. That's a terrible idea. New York's is even more than that. I think theirs is 16. It's a horrible idea. They should just teach them to shoot properly, or send them somewhere where they can learn to shoot properly. It's a better idea. JB's lurking in the background. Well, welcome. Yeah, heavier triggers are never a good idea for safety. They're kind of a failed evolutionary step of keeping people from having negligent discharges by physically making it harder to pull the trigger. The problem is, if you make it harder to pull the trigger, you're putting more stuff on the trigger you don't want. And it makes it harder to shoot accurately, especially under stress. It's a big problem in New York with the New York triggers. They're very heavy. In fact, those triggers are so heavy. If you get, so in a Glock, there's two components that control the press of the trigger, the weight on it. One of them is the trigger spring itself, and the other is the connector. And you have a standard connector, which is either blank or has a dot. You got a plus connector, I think has a plus on it. A minus connector has a minus. And it's determined by the angle of the connector at the top for resetting the trigger. Well, the New York trigger spring, there's an orange one, I think, and an olive one, and they're different weights. And if you use the heaviest one, they say do not use it with a plus connector because it's so heavy it'll physically gall away the metal on your connector. It's just it was just never designed to be done that way. It's all a bunch of band-aids and nonsense. Just get good training, run the stock trigger, put a bunch of rounds through it so it's nice and smooth, and it is good. My AR has what most people consider to be a horrible trigger. It's an old Palmetto mil spec trigger most people think are junk. Shoots just fine. It's the shooter, not the trigger. You can't buy a level of skill. Well, Heavens Mopars has a quote here of someone saying, don't pull your weapon unless you intend on using it. Are there other reasons the fight is about to escalate? So here's the thing. I wouldn't pull a firearm unless I had every reason to use it under the situation. Like if someone threatens to murder you, that's a pretty good reason to pull it. But you have to have a justification for that. Basically, are they going to do something that changes your mind before the time you actually use it or not? Statistically, it's 29 out of 30 times that the firearm coming into play causes them to change their mind. 29 out of 30. But that said, you're only pulling it if you have every intention of actually shooting them, absent something changing their mind. Generally speaking, the stop command is your warning, and that's it. Yeah, the Mongoose had extra barrels. So did the M60. Dad would tell me about changing M60 barrels. He said you had a welder's glove, and the barrel gets so hot, and you change it out with it hot. He said it was a pair of people shooting an M60. You'd have one in case they needed to change the barrel, and also one to have the ammo boxes to put on it. Yeah, they get hot enough, the rifling start going right. I've gotten some barrels pretty hot. You put 4 rounds, 120 rounds back to back to back to back through a barrel, it gets pretty hot. Yeah, sharpening bullets. There's always some kind of new thing under the sun too. There's always somebody trying to come up with something new. And I like innovation, but I'm convinced a lot of this stuff, I see more worthless inventions in the gun world, I think, than you ever see in the car world. BNR says, you ever have to shoot in self-defense for your life? No, I thought I might have to. There were 2 times I was really concerned about it over the years, but never actually got that far to actually drawing on someone. But the best thing you can possibly do is try to avoid going stupid places with stupid people and doing stupid things. That is the best policy, to not have to do that. But the person who tells you they've had to use a gun in self-defense or draw on somebody 6 times, that guy's got other problems. He needs to reevaluate where he's going and what he's doing and what time of day and all of that. JV doesn't need a gun. He knows martial arts. Well, martial arts is great, but it's not a replacement for it. They're 2 different things. Some of the best martial artists I know also carry a gun. Andy says, what's your take on red dots on a carry pistol? If you're talking about like an optic, they're okay. They're getting better all the time. I still think that for a pistol 15 yards and in, it is really hard to beat an XS big dot or a conventional sight. I mean, to me, I like that better than trying to practice enough repetition from the holster to be able to constantly acquire that sight through the window. That's just me. I know a lot of other people would agree with that, but I think that for speed and accuracy inside of, say, 7-10 yards, maybe even out to 15 at the most, I prefer an open sight. And that's on a pistol. Now, on a rifle, that's totally different. I love an optic on a rifle. My AR's got an Aimpoint Pro on it, and it's unmagnified, but I love to have the dot optic on the rifle. But see, that's got a much bigger aperture. I like that much better on a rifle, especially over like a peep sight. Remember, those rifles are mostly made, the sights are made for shooting prone and stuff like that, not like a quick acquisition. That's where the red dot really shines. Dizzy put 150 rounds through an SKS in 20 minutes, but got real hot. I'm talking doing 124 magazines. I'm back to back to back to back. 30 out, grab your mag, knock one out, put it in, pull it, run the bolt. 30 more, do that 4 times in a row. The best AK class I ever took was with Sonny Bazikas, and it was wild, man. It was wild. He had a drill where he likes to test people's ability to shoot in imbalanced positions with an imbalance, right? And he says, we don't use Swiss balls or anything like that here. So he would have half the class stand on top of somebody and shoot a couple of mags while you're standing on someone's sternum trying to shoot accurately. And then you'd switch and someone would stand on you trying to shoot 2 magazines, right? It is not easy. You'd be surprised how much your feet move around like this on top of a person. So that was freaking interesting. Oh, and there's brass raining down on you too. So don't forget that. Interesting drills. DNR's been sleeping with his 9mm since Brandon came to power. I don't think Brandon is going to come to your house. Brandon can't find his own bathroom. He sure can't find your house. Yeah, I like the pistol optics thing is okay. I haven't moved to it, but who knows? Maybe in about 10 years with older eyes, I may say, technology's better. I like them. But for now, I'll stick with the big dot. I hear the SKS2 is popular in Canada right now because it's not on the banned list, unlike the AK. Aunt D says, how about a light on a carry? I like it okay. I like a light on a carry pistol. I have a weapon-mounted light. I do prefer using, a separate. This is a gunfighting light right here. I'll show it to you. It's a surefire tactician. Let's see if I can do this. Really nice light, really bright. I think it's 800 lumens. But the nice thing is it doesn't have a hot center. So if you take most flashlights, you'll get a hot center and you get light splashing back on you. This is as bright as you can get and not have that. So if you're trying to clear a building or something, this is great for that. Yes, I also use it for a lot of stuff like you're working on the car and holding the light. It's got a really nice heavy-duty clip on it you're not going to break. And it comes with the shock cord. So you can put that thing up around your hand, like that. So you go hands-free. You can use that with your pistol if you like. I actually find more utility in having a separate light than I do the weapon-mounted light. So, and there's other good lights, but there's a lot of things about this one that are superior for gunfighting. Like if you notice, it's got a momentary tail cap on it, so that you can't drop it and leave it on. It's an ND with a light. You can fix it on, but that cap is made so that You have to be holding it for it to stay on. Stuff like that makes a big difference. And no hot center. And it also, too, for reliability, this is made to run a 16650 or a pair of well, it's made to run a pair of CR123s. It's made to run a pair of these. And these batteries are not rechargeable, but they're more reliable. The rechargeable lithium batteries are not as reliable. But that said, if you want to cheat it, you can run a 16650 rechargeable. And if you're double duty, your gunfight and a utility light, you can do that. You're giving up a little bit of reliability for functionality. It's your choice. Hold on a second before we do this. I got to turn my red dot on. Why are you turning it on? See, this again, this is administrative stuff. Your red dot should stay on. That dot can stay on for months and months and months. Leave the thing on right there in the case. My rifle stays loaded with the red dot on in the case. And just change that battery out. I do change mine out more frequently because I like the dot on a little bit higher setting than most, because so that it works good in bright daylight. But it's a compromise because you have to turn it down if you get in the dark with it. Are semi-auto shotguns reliable for in-house or the pump shotguns? Shit, semi-autos are good, but you want a good one. A Benelli is a good one. The Mossberg, or no, what is that? That Beretta 1301. I hear a lot of good about it. Those are good semi-autos. If you're going to get one, get a good one. I'll tell you, on shotgun recommendations, Tim Morris at Tactical Response teaches their fighting shotgun class. That is the best shotgun class I've ever taken. And he makes wonderful recommendations when it comes to shotgun gear. Man, you talk about a class that wears you out. You shoot a few hundred rounds. I mean, I think it's what, maybe 500, 700, 800 rounds through a shotgun over the course of a couple of days through a pump shotgun. You feel it. It's worth it. Lars is out. Thanks, man. Thanks for putting up the description. I'm just sticking around a little bit. We still got some folks in here, but I'll roll out here in a little bit. Just something different tonight. I think you can cover the hallway with one shot of double, triple lot. Not really. Your shotgun pattern usually spreads out about 1 inch per yard, pretty close. So if your hallway is, say, 10 yards long, that's a pretty long hallway, you'd be at about a 10-inch pattern with double aught buck. And that's about what you want. It's about what you want. You got 9 pellets, and you hopefully will get all 9 on your target. You don't want any flyers that are addressed to whom they may concern. Dizzy, why do you think you deserve an answer? I don't care anything about that silly grandstanding about those places. I don't care. Makes no difference to me. I mean, you talk about Trump wanting to buy somebody else's sovereignty. I mean, our current president's been giving ours away for years. Joseph says, new subscriber stuck in Colorado. Well, hey, man, welcome. Thanks for coming by. This is just something different. You know, in all the years, I've been going live on Friday nights for years and years and years. It's the only time I've ever done a live stream like this, and I'm doing it on a Thursday night. But if you want to stick around for car content, that's what you'll see on Friday nights. But you're certainly welcome. DNR is not political here. Universal, like, well, whatever. I mean, I just, I don't want to turn it into politics, but I'm not weird and all third rail about it and stuff. I don't care. I just didn't see a need to make a debate out of it or any of that. I mean, I would hope that even people who don't like guns or are hoplophobic or whatever, would still at least recognize the need for good training and good practices to be competent operators, which has nothing. I mean, I'm telling you what, if you need to use a firearm, it makes no difference how you vote. You're going to want to be as competent with it as possible. And so in my classes, I don't ask people how they vote before I teach them how to grip a firearm or press a trigger or use their sights or any of that stuff. I've had people who are, the best you could call them will be conscientious objectors to firearms, but I've had them take my class just to learn stuff. Dizzy, I'm just not doing that here. I'm not doing that here. You can go binge CNN. I mean, you offer proof by having a clip of something CNN propaganda puts out there. That stuff has just become noise to me. I am far more worried about what's going on in this country. I think all of us are. Like how much of our sovereignty has been given away to China. But I digress. Joseph said, all skills need training and practice. Dry fire 3 times a week to maintain skill. Oh, yeah, most people don't do anything near that. Dizzy, you put a clip on your channel of that. I think it's that. It could have been MSNBC. I was pretty sure it's CNN, though. Whatever. Same sewage, different barrel. Joseph says, all skills need training and practice. Yes, you need training, and then you need to practice your training. That's the big one, because when people practice stuff they were never trained to do, and they practice bad habits, they will continue to do that. That's what you don't want to do. So, yeah, I don't know when I'll do it. I don't even know for sure that it'll happen. If there's enough interest, I'll do it. I'll put something together, put it out. But I want to do a training class in Middle Tennessee. Haven't done one here. I could do one here, but I would like to do one in Middle Tennessee and invite the YouTubers if you want to come out. And it'll be a No Name Nationals benefit class. So I'll eat the overhead out of pocket and engross what we make on it. It's just regular tuition prices will go toward the No Name Nationals General Fund. How many people need it for your class? Well, I would definitely cap it at 12 for sure. We don't need that many to make. I would like to see a minimum of 6, a maximum of 12. And if we go to 12, I'd have to do it in 2 relays. If any more than about 8, I got to run it in 2 relays, which slows things down a little, but that's okay. Dizzy's talking about selling 3,000 acres in Missouri. Dude, look at what's been just given away. Look at what's been given away. Anyway, I mean, all of our sovereignty has just been given to China hand over fist. And you're finding 3,000 acres in Missouri? It's crazy. I don't think that they should be allowed to buy land in our country. That's going to come back to haunt us. But anyway, enough of that. Anybody have anything else? We might wrap it up here in a little bit. Same in our country. I agree, Aaron. Got a lot of passionate things here. I have to find it. The terms and conditions for registration on my class website you had a little litmus test whether or not I even wanted to train you. I had lots of things on there, people I don't want to train. I had things like if you abuse animals, kneel for the national anthem. I had lots of things. If you did any of these things, I don't want to train you. Dr. Go says, interesting saying, practice makes perfect, then practice makes progress. You have to, perfect practice makes perfect. If you practice imperfectly, you're not going to perfect anything. That paragraph is hilarious. I have to find, oh yeah, Colleen's probably read it. But yeah, I'm for real. That's NSB down for a class. Yeah, I'll just see. I'll see what we can do. It will probably be this spring. Joseph says, recently exploring how many rounds I can get on target in under 3 seconds at different distances. Cool. And that's under 3 seconds from what? Is that on target, at the ready, from the holster? From what? Practice makes muscle memory, right. And that's why you want to make sure to be practicing the right stuff. I'm in on a class. Yeah, well, Street Fox, I've had them here for years. I may have another one here. It's just, I've run into a little bit of, I don't know. Coming out of COVID, everything is a little bit different with policies and that kind of stuff. And I teach for the outcome, not the income. So I wasn't particularly motivated to deal with a lot of it. Anyway, appreciate y'all hanging out tonight. Nobody else has anything. Any other questions, feel free to ask them. If not, I'll go ahead and wrap up. From the draw, worked armed security at grocery stores part-time. That's cool. That's cool. Joseph, where have you trained? That's good. Armed security is a good thing. I know a friend of mine, he does armed security for DMV, and he used to be armed security at an Israeli radio station. You talk about a place that got a lot of threats. I'm sure he was glad to get out of there. Here will be better served possible. Well, dude, I've had, I don't know how many dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens here. I haven't taught one in a couple of years, but Peckerwood's got to roll. Yeah, man. See, man, you say night owl, but what time is it where you are? Isn't it like 1 in the afternoon on Friday? Have any recommendations for training in Massachusetts, Connecticut area? Yes. Brian Sayers. Look him up. He would be a good choice to train with in New York. Look him up. I don't know where he's teaching now, but that dude is solid. He's one I can recommend. Dr. Go says, thanks for mentioning this live on the last one. Well, yeah, that's the reason why. Class dunce gets a high point. What is it they say, Blake? They wanted to start coating the high points with Teflon so they wouldn't spark when you threw it out the car window trying to get away. Yeah, I would see those things for sale for $119. If your budget's that tight, I get it. I get it, right? Like, no judgment for not having the budget, but for most people, they just don't want to invest in a serious pistol. And the thing is you can pay $400 for a pistol or $4,000 for a pistol, and the $400 pistol is the better fighting tool. The $4,000 pistol will have fancy engraving and still malfunction more than it shoots. So, it's not like the more you spend, the better you get. But I do think it's worth spending $500. You can get a Glock police trade-in for $400, second generation, and you're good to go. Any generation of Glock runs great. All of them. All 5 generations run like a sewing machine. Good door stopper, paperweight. Yeah, I mean, they would sell them at the shop where I used to teach, and we've had 1 or 2 come through class. They can do okay. I've never had one come into an advanced class for a reason. I don't think it would make it through, but you never know. It might surprise me. I think when people get in training classes, they really learn a lot about their hardware. Like when they have to change a magazine under stress or fix a malfunction, they're like, oh man, that's a lot harder to do when you're in a hurry or when you're under stress. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. Stick around just a few more minutes and I'll call it at the bottom of the hour. I figure I've never done a live like this in all the years, so I'll give it a few minutes. Andy says, I kind of want a high point just because they aren't approved for Massachusetts. What's the reasoning they give? Not that it really matters. Bear Rose says the best handgun you can own is the one that fits in your hand. I totally disagree with that. I think the best handgun that you can own is getting training on the one that's going to work best to solve your problem. And man, I have had students as young as 10 years old shoot a Glock just fine. So learning that proper grip is absolutely key. And usually the full-size handguns are better for beginners because they soak up the recoil. So what little bit you give up going to a little bit bigger frame is usually completely worth it, and how well it soaks up the recoil, because that's what's trying to to take the gun out of your hands when you shoot it. NSB's got one of the high point, right? It's a high point rifle. Yeah. Yeah, my lawyer had one of those. He liked the gimmicky stuff, though. He liked the Kel-Tec and the KSG and all that. That kind of stuff. This is America. If you want to have gimmicky guns, go for it. But not me, man. I like very traditional guns and learning to run them with great competence and efficiency and to great effect. That's my preference. Yeah, another one about best handgun if it's best in your hand barrows. A lot of people don't realize, like, they can't reach the magazine release with the handgun in their hands. They think they need a smaller pistol. Not true at all. You're supposed to have to adjust your grip to reach that button, because if you could reach the button with a proper grip, guess what you're going to do under stress? You're going to accidentally reach the button and knock the mag out while you're shooting. So there's a lot of things a lot of people don't realize goes into how a gun is supposed to fit your hand. You're not supposed to technically be reaching the magazine release. You're supposed to have to move the gun slightly to reach it. But if you have long enough fingers, you can touch it anyway. And this is a big problem with people that put extended magazine releases on. Why you shouldn't. Massachusetts requires an expensive drop test for any pistol. Okay. I mean, really, man, the pistols on the market really should be drop safe. They should be. I know a SIG 320 had some problems with that, and then the military came up with the worst solution, which was putting an external safety on it. That was the worst solution. They should have gone back to the drawing. Well, what they should have done is they should have just adopted the Glock. That's what they should have done. But they didn't do that because Glock wouldn't put an external safety on it. They wanted to make better pistols. Does he likes his bolt actions? Yeah, sure. I have a Remington 511 bolt action. I've always liked how just glass smooth bluing on the bolt is. It always looks so nice on that thing. Yeah, you mentioned dropping pistols. That's one thing I teach people in the class is don't try to catch a gun that you drop, and don't panic about dropping. If it drops, let it drop. It is way more dangerous trying to catch a pistol you drop than it hitting the ground. If it hits the ground, nothing's going to happen. If you try to catch it, that could be horrific. Oh my gosh. The other thing too in our advanced classes, if you're out of pistol ammo, you just drop it. Or if you need to switch from your rifle and pistol, don't be afraid to just drop it. I mean, people get hung up and weird about dropping guns. If that gun is unloaded, it's as safe as it's ever going to be. Bad Tree Blake likes an 1187. His favorite's an 870. Yeah, I'll tell you. Yeah, the 1187, those are good. I like them. I mean, I like Remingtons. My shotgun is a Remington. If I had it handy, I don't know if I do or not. Actually, I might. Oh, I know where it would be. Oh, I have a picture of my shotgun. Do I? Yes, I do. Huh. There's me with my shotgun. That was actually at that was Tactical Responses Alumni Weekend, and we had some old stages they let us shoot. And that was actually a rifle stage. I did not have my rifle, but I shot it with a shotgun just to do so. And I don't know if you can see it, but that's the big dot sight on the shotgun. I have it on the pistol and on the shotgun, and I love it. But yeah, I love the 870. Nice piece. I love it. If I was going to do a semi-auto, I would probably just do the Benelli, grit my teeth and pay for it. The Benelli M4 is not cheap, but they're good and they run. You know, it's funny you talk about bird hunting. To do the NRA instructor qual for shotgun, you have to shoot clay targets, which I always thought was just so weird. But I show up to class with an 18-inch barrel and double aught buck. And I said, I want to try to shoot this qualifier with buck through an 18-inch barrel pump gun. They said, there's no way. I passed it barely. I barely passed it. I missed plenty, but I still did pass it. They let me try some bird guns and stuff. I just thought it was weird. It felt like you were trying to pan forever and a day with that really long, heavy barrel. It was real different. That's the only time in my life I've ever shot clay targets, and it was goofy. 20 gauge semi-auto. Yeah, 20 gauge is great. The nice thing about a 20 gauge is, especially if you use it for home defense, they're wonderful self-defense shotguns, but they're good for youth, smaller people, women, little dudes. You know, I got a lot of weight soaking up a 12 gauge, but if you don't, that could be the 20 gauge could be the thing for you. And they're great. Like a youth model Remington 870, I'd love to have one. Bear Rose traded to Weatherby for a set of 1911s. 1911s are pretty guns. Yeah, Andy, what can I tell you, man? Your state's been taken over by the communists. I mean, I wish y'all luck in taking your state back, and if you manage to do it, we'll be on second shift. What can I say? I wish the same for our folks in California. Here's something fun. Last time I was down there at the same range where I had the shotgun, I found this by the map. Here's a Cadillac that's been through a whole lot of vehicle tactics courses. Oh, and the caddy was one of those weird 4, 6, 8 cylinder things. So being range fodder was its highest and best purpose, I can assure you. BNR is asking, what's the longest barrel like on a 12 gauge shotgun for house self 18-inch? That's what's legal. The ATF is going to put you through a lot of rigmarole. Oh, that said, though, you can get like a Mossberg Shockwave or the little Remington version with a 14-inch barrel that does not have a pistol grip or a stock on it. And if you take one of those little things and you put a brace on there, those are excellent. But outside of that, I like an 18-inch barrel. And then I like the mag tube extended all the way out to it. And that's, if you look at this, that's exactly what I have. I have a 18 barrel with the mag tube extended all the way out to it. And then a big dot sight. That's the hot ticket, in my opinion. And the only thing I like that's extended on a shotgun, I like on a Remington only, I like to have an extended safety button for the trigger because it's recessed. It's hard to reach. So I do like that. I don't like extended widgets so much anything, but I do on that. And also got a side saddle on here. And the side saddle is kind of weird too. SOE makes Velcro side saddles that you can put 5 or 6 rounds in, and they Velcro to the side of the receiver. So you're not taking the pins out and doing any weird stuff there. And you can just pull that Velcro off, rip it off, slap another one on there. It's really nice, actually. BNR says 18 inches hard to find local right now. You could shorten your own. And the way the ATF defines the barrel distance is when you have a closed bolt, you measure down to the face of the closed bolt to the end of the barrel. And I want to say a Remington barrel is actually like 18 1/4, something like that. But that's the proper way to measure a barrel. When you see somebody sticking a tape measure on the outside, you could do it if you knew exactly where the bolt came to, but the way you're supposed to do is you put a dowel rod down the barrel measure to the face of the bolt. Heavens Mopars in college tried to get an Army scholarship, went to Fort Knox for 2.5 months, had our own M16. Yeah, cool. Fun times indeed. Dutch Vornik shoots a 1911 A1. It's 82 years old, shooting for 58 years on my 3rd barrel. Good for you, man. Good for you. I love it. I'd like to see that. That's cool. Barrows has extended safety on the 870. Yeah. Well, the thing I like about the Mossberg 590, and to tell you the truth, even though I'm a Remington guy at heart, I really like the Mossberg 590 because it's got the safety on the top of the receiver to use with your thumb, and it's really good ambidextrous and with gloves, and you can reach. It's just a better design. I'll give Mossberg that for sure. I never liked the look of the trigger guard, but who cares? I think the Mossberg gun is really good. Oh, and it's got 2 extractors for the shells, which is really nice. And I've never had those cause a problem port loading it either. Yeah, and those longer barrels are fine, DNR. I just don't like any extra on the shotgun barrel. I want the pattern to spread. So 18-inch barrel, no choke is the go-to defense shotgun barrel to me. What about potato guns? Cool. I'll watch your potato gun content. Sure will. Use hairspray and a gas grill igniter. Is that your way you do it? I see guys doing that with propane, and I'm like, ooh. Really worries me about the pressure rating on the PVC, but whatever. I've done sketchier. When I was a kid, I made a little cannon out of a piece of water pipe with a screw-on cap that used an M70 in the back of it to shoot a slingshot pellet. It worked pretty good, too. Oh, so sketchy, though. That cast cap screwed on the back. Had a little hole drilled for the fuse, the whole thing. Izzy says his brother Daryl carried a pistol grip sawed-off 12-gauge in a hip holster working for St. Louis Mafia. Interesting. Hippie has all of his fingers or 9.5? He lose part of one of them? Danny Boyd is here. Mossberg is loud as well. Yeah, I've not noted that, but that could well be. Yeah, the thing I notice is louder than 357 SIG. Pistols chambered in that. My gosh, they're loud. That is got to be the loudest little auto-loading pistol caliber ever. I don't know, just the design of it. It's got that neck-down slug, but they are really loud. Noticeably louder than most others. Anyway, I said I'd roll to the bottom of the hour, and I appreciate everybody who's come in here. Had a good time tonight. Thought I would do this. You guys ever want to have another live like this, let me know. I don't know how soon I would do it, but we can. And if you have a specific topic you want to cover, like anything in martial artistry with a gun, carrying a gun, using a gun, operating it, any function of that, let me know. I'd be glad to do it if you like this kind of stuff. And presumably, into the future, if this is something you like and want to do, I could get some really great guests in this space too. So, there's a lot of things we do in life before the YouTube automotive community. What can I say? Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap up. We'll be live, of course, tomorrow. More no-name nationals content and that sort of thing. But wanted to do something good tonight. Thanks for you all being here. I appreciate it. Y'all take care and have a good Thursday.